board members present this afternoon are Glenn Gardner, Phil Huey, and Julia Martin. City staff present today are Tori Parrish and Kim Lavin. The order of today's meeting will be as follows. We'll start with an introduction and overview of each project by city staff to the benefit of the board and the public, followed by a presentation of the applicant. Each presenter, please clearly state your name first and last for the record. This is the time when anyone speaking on behalf of the application should speak. This is owners, developers, designers, consultants. By ordinance, the board can ask questions of the applicant at any time. By custom, we do so on the heels of the applicant's presentation. This will be followed by a period of public comment. Again, if you are speaking, please state your name very clearly for the record, first and last. Public comment will be followed by city staff comments and recommendations. And after that, the applicant will have the opportunity to respond or clarify any point raised during public comment or during city staff comments and recommendations. This is not an opportunity to reopen your application. It's only a period to clarify or respond. This will be followed by board discussion and a vote. The following items have been withdrawn or deferred today: 130 Darlington Avenue and 1 Percy Street. I ask that everyone please turn off your cell phones or other devices during this time. And please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, lot coverage, and livability issues are not within the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. I'll turn it over to Kim Lavin for some meeting protocol that she'll go through.
Thanks, Lindsay. Next slide. Staff will control the PowerPoint presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with the submittal requirements. Applicants need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during your presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name whenever speaking. Video and microphone have been disabled for all attendees. Attendees, not board members or staff, will only be given the capability to speak when they're called on during the public comment period. Chat and the Q&A functions have been disabled for everyone. For public comment, all applicants and team members and the public have been required to register, indicate the project that they wish to comment on, and submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Just as in an in-person meeting, all applications heard today are part of a public meeting format. If you have registered and will speak during the public comment portion of the meeting, you will need to state your name and address for the record. Those members of the public that have registered will be called on in order by project. Staff will call on the registered members of the public to speak for each project. Unregistered members of the public who raise their hand will not be called on. And for the board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments on their vote on a motion. Each member, when voting, should respond yay in favor or nay not in favor. The chair shall reread the motion verbatim, and the board member making the motion should correct the chair if they have not reread the motion. The board member needs to recuse. They'll be temporarily removed from the meeting and placed back in the meeting at the start of the next agenda item. If the board needs to go into an executive session, they will call into a separate conference line, and all video and audio on Zoom will be temporarily turned off until they're ready to return to the regular meeting. Results and staff comments will be posted on the city website at www.charleston-sc.gov/BAR. These proceedings are being recorded and broadcast live to the City of Charleston's YouTube channel. That's all I have.
Kim, so agenda item number 130 Darlington Avenue has been withdrawn by staff. Agenda item number 2, 774 Rutledge Avenue.
774 Rutledge Avenue is requesting final approval for demolition of the garage at the rear. The garage isn't rated in the North Central neighborhood, and it was built in 1940, but it's in the historic corridor district. Here's an aerial image, just giving some context to the location in Rutledge at the intersection of Gordon. And just a little closer image showing the garage that we are discussing. Here's the sliver that you see from Rutledge. These are the stairs. And this is the 1944 and 51 corrected map showing the same building. And hold on just a moment. We have Kristen Maloney available to talk. Kristen, you have the floor whenever you're ready to speak.
Ms. Maloney, you're on mute. Ms. Maloney, you're no longer on mute, but we cannot hear you.
Excuse me, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah, Kristen couldn't make it to the virtual meeting. I'm Kevin Maloney, her husband. Y'all had several people visit the property this morning. As they can tell you, it is a dilapidated garage, a dirt floor. I'm having some issues with asbestos siding falling off the building, and it's becoming friable. I've had neighbors complain about it, so that's one of the main reasons we're requesting to demo the garage.
Mr. Maloney, did you have anything else, or do you want us to move on?
Yeah, just move on.
Okay. Do we have any questions from board members for Mr. Maloney? All right. Let's move on to public comment.
Lindsay, we don't have any public comment.
All right. Let's move to city staff comments and recommendations. Kim?
Thank you. Despite several modern elements, roof, wood siding, original fabric and wood exists in several places. However, this rear building does not offer the character that we aim to preserve in the Wagner Terrace neighborhood. While this is in the historic corridor, proposals for new construction are out of BAR jurisdiction, as this property is zoned for less than 8 units and is residential. Staff's recommending approval.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Maloney, did you want to respond or have any questions about staff comments?
No, ma'am, I do not.
All right, we'll move on to board discussion and a vote.
Okay, you know, for me, this little structure does kind of harken back to the culture of the 1940s, when a simple apartment over a garage was a fairly common prototype. And there's a deceptive amount of original fabric present. The framing is all original, the eave details are intact. The roof over the porch and the ceiling there are all original. And again, the siding is present under the vinyl or aluminum and asbestos. But ultimately, in my estimation, this just doesn't quite meet the threshold for denial of demolition. But for what it's worth, even though we have zero purview over what comes next, I will be really sad if what replaces this modest accessory building is multiple new dwellings that loom over the historic 1925 house at the street.
meeting is being recorded.
Glenn Gardner.
But I think you should maybe turn off one of your other devices.
I hope that's better, but it isn't.
Sort of, not really. Do you know sign language?
All right, I'm gonna try now. Am I better? I apologize.
Much better.
Okay, sorry. I just have a brief comment. I understand that there are some non-original and non-historic items here, but I do hate to see the vernacular and the scale of this building erased. But kind of like Julia said, as I've stated before, it is a bit unfortunate that the BAR has no jurisdiction over what may come back in order to help protect the scale of the neighborhood and give a little bit of comfort to neighbors if something else is built there. But it is low enough on the visibility totem pole and not quite high enough in quality that I can admittedly stand and fight for it. So I'm not going to oppose it, but I also don't necessarily support its demolition.
I don't have anything to add. I'm in agreement with Julia and Glenn's comments. I did find walking around this morning and seeing the materials, and this is a cute accessory unit, and I wish it could be saved. I also don't think that it rises to the level of something that I would not approve demolition of. Sounds like there may be a bit of a consensus amongst us.
All right, I'll make a motion for approval.
We have a motion for approval. Do I have a second?
This is Bill, I'll second.
All right, I'll put it to a vote. Glenn?
Can't hear you, Glenn.
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Maloney. Moving on to agenda item number 3, 194 Nassau. Kim, take it away.
Thank you. "194 Nassau Street is requesting final approval for demolition. The building isn't rated in the East Side neighborhood circa 1900 in the historic materials demo purview. Here's an aerial for familiarity with the property. Just south of Jackson. So closer image of the streetscape. And here is 194. Sanborn maps from 1944 and with 1951 revisions show a similar building. And this is a survey card from SOS CHS. It's a conditions assessment of the building with ratings on all of the building features. And If Mr. Keim wants to take it from here, you have the floor.
Hold on a second. I'm going to remove my Bluetooth device for better. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Excellent. I want to try to just clarify that the intention here wasn't to demolish and raise the structure to the ground initially. And I'm not saying that that's in the intent as it is right now, but realistically, after a thorough assessment of the existing condition of the wood structure that remains of this building, it would be dishonest of us to say that as we begin the renovation and restoration of this structure, that there's going to be much of it that's going to remain. It's really just gotten to that point. The work that we're going to do will replace the existing structure with a structure that will basically look very similar to the structure that's there. We will remove the cinder block CMU front from the front of the house. That was added on at some point in the past, but it's not consistent with the original architecture of the home. I mean, there's not a lot more to say in regards to it other than just that it's unfortunate that we're going to have to go to the extent that we're going to have to go to basically recreate, because it's just so far beyond the point of restoration that it would be dishonest of us to represent that we're going to be able to save 90% of the structure. There's just not that much of it left.
Is that all, Mr. Keim?
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think there's really too much more to say than that. I'd be happy to respond to any questions just to clarify.
All right. Do we have any board questions?
So again, just to clarify, you're asking for full demolition, right? And that's what you're officially requesting here.
Yes, we are, because we believe that there's less than 20% of the existing structure. And so we will be disassembling the structure and trying to salvage and preserve as much as we can. But during the course of that, our faith level is not high that there's going to be much of it left in such a way that it would qualify. I think we don't want to get into the crosshairs and create a problem with the city by not accurately assessing where this project is going to go.
Any other board questions at this time? All right, let's move on to public comment. So we have a couple of letters. I'm going to read these first. Okay, I'll go ahead and read the letters. The first letter that we have . Good afternoon, ladies. Julie O'Connor reached out to me about this project, and I would like to voice my opposition to the demolition of this house. When I was reviewing the permit application, I noticed that the flood zone is erroneously listed as AE13. Per the new flood maps adopted this winter, the house is in zone AE10. According to the elevation certificate provided in the application, the top of the bottom floor is 12.9 feet, well above the required flood elevation. Even though I have not been inside, I have biked by this house many times and noticed that it is certainly not beyond restoration. In fact, I worked on another cottage a block away at 227 Nassau. That was in similar condition and was completely rehabilitated and won a Janakopoulos award last year. This residence deserves the same opportunity to be reimagined. Thanks, Adrian. Signed, Adrian Jacobson. Next, we have a letter. Dear BAR members, thank you for the opportunity to join in the site visit this morning at 194 Nassau Street. This house is sadly a textbook example of demolition by neglect. Our survey card from 2018 shows the house in severe disrepair, but we would like to note that it has not deteriorated seriously in the last 3 years. While it certainly needs a lot of work, we believe that this house is salvageable. Special attention will certainly need to be paid to stabilizing the house while being renovated, but it is not unlike many of the wonderful examples around town of successful renovations. While we recognize the cost associated with restoring a structure that has been allowed to deteriorate, this is certainly not in the category of the worst structures in our survey, and we believe it is absolutely possible to rehabilitate. The applicant indicates that the house would need to be raised in order to meet current FEMA requirements, but we would like to point out that the site is now in an AE10 flood zone as of January 29, 2021, and would not need to be elevated. We ask that the VAR deny this application. Sincerely, Julie O'Connor for SOS Charleston. And do we have anyone speaking from the public?
We also, I don't see Anna Catherine Carroll here, but she has submitted a letter as well from with the Preservation Society. Oh, I see that maybe the advocacy department.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
We can.
So sorry, I'm logged in on the wrong account. This is Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston, and we have comments very in keeping with the two previous letters just read. The Preservation Society appreciates the opportunity to visit the site this morning to more closely inspect the building. We are opposed to this request for demolition and strongly advocate for its preservation. This circa 1900 house is an important part of the historic streetscape on this block of Nassau. And based on our observations on site and the materials submitted, we do feel the house retains a significant level of historic fabric and, importantly, much of its original form. There have been several examples of historic structures in similar condition that have been successfully rehabilitated. As Adrian Jacobson pointed out, specifically, we want to point to 227 Nassau, just down the street, where a Friedman's cottage in a similarly dilapidated state was fully restored, preserving as much historic fabric as possible and replacing in kind only where necessary. And as mentioned, this project earned a Carolopoulos Award from our organization due to the sensitive approach, which could be used as a reference for a path forward for this property. And it's even more encouraging that the structure would not require elevation, supporting the fact that the building could be rehabilitated in place. So we would urge the board to deny this request for demolition and in favor of pursuing a rehabilitation of this building. Thank you.
We have April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for demolition of the historic Friedman's Cottage at 194 Nassau Street. We are sorry to see this historic structure in the neglected condition it is in today. This building is surrounded by similarly scaled Friedman's cottages and contributes to the historic character of the neighborhood. We have seen the recent rehabilitation of the Jackson Street Friedman's cottages, which were also in exceptionally poor condition. With effort, 194 Nassau Street can be successfully rehabilitated. Vernacular Friedman's cottages, such as 194 Nassau Street, are few in number and vital to protect. We recommend denial of this application. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Kim, do we have anyone else speaking from the public?
That's all, Lindsay.
All right. Then I'll turn it back over to you for city comments and recommendations.
Thank you. This building is in a state of severely deferred maintenance, but this should not be the determining factor in a demolition request. The building, despite the lack of maintenance, retains a significant amount of material in salvageable condition. We're asking you to compile a thorough conditions assessment of each building component as part of a preservation plan to determine its viability rather than a wholesale demolition. Additionally, the new flood maps place the current finished floor well above the required height for current FEMA regulations, so any new submittal must incorporate the new information with an accurate certificate. The staff's recommending denial is submitted with staff comments and final review by staff.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Kime, did you want to respond to anything raised by the public or by the city comments, or to clarify anything?
Yeah, I think there's a pretty gross misinterpretation of our plan here. We want to save this house, okay? But we have, as the people who are going to be doing this project, on a board by board consideration of what it's going to take. And as we've done that board by board consideration, we have determined that the boards themselves do not retain substantially enough quality or consistency to keep that many of them. Now, I can change the name of this from a demolition to a deconstruct reconstruct, but I believe that everyone who's giving these comments is it's confusing to me. If we go through and we show you that the entire back third of this house is completely termite eaten, how do you propose that we magically remake wood that's gone? You know, our goal here is to keep this house looking exactly as it is. We want this house to stay this house, with the exception of a zoning application for some addition on the back, which that would be the one area of actual demolition, would be the removal of the rear wall. It has always been our objective to save this structure. But we've looked at the boards, we've touched the boards, and I'm just telling you that I don't know of techniques or strategies that can be used to make wood reappear where it has been consumed by infestation. So that's why this seems like we're going to be at odds here just a little bit. We don't want to end up with a house that's a new construction house. We want to end up with a house that is that house rebuilt. But if we replace the boards that are beyond salvage, we're going to replace a substantial amount of the wood in that house with new wood that is beyond salvage. So I don't know how you would advise us to proceed forward. We have the same sentiment as every single one of you. We want this house to be an important and long-lasting historic landmark in Charleston and remain the same house. What I'm confused by is how is it that you would perceive us to do that? We will have to disassemble and reassemble this house to make it exist. That's pretty much the extent of what I had to say. The demolition permit is not to bring a bulldozer in and graze this to the ground. The demolition permit is because there will be substantial amounts of the house that are going to have to be replaced because they're gone.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Kime. I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote now.
This is Bill. I'll go ahead and start. I guess to address the comments that the applicant just made. I don't think that we're necessarily at an impasse here. I believe by staff's recommendations and their comment, especially number 3, which is a compilation of thorough conditions and assessment of each building component, and as part of a preservation plan. So I believe there are really a couple of factors at play here. By not having to elevate the home takes away the specter of that issue of a change of form, which is something that I don't believe I'm looking for at all. I believe the form should remain the same, and that's really one of the character defining features of the house is the form of this house. But also understanding, to your point to the applicant, that there are going to be beyond structural salvage deteriorated materials. A preservation plan that staff's suggesting in their comments is really part of that. It's an assessment of what can be kept and what is going to need to be replaced. So I think we're getting to the same point in a roundabout way. And by basically denying demolition is just saying that preservation of that form will stay, and preservation of as much of that material as possible will stay. And the end result will be hopefully what the applicant just stated. So I think in a matter of procedure here, we're talking about denial of demolition and the premise inspector of demolition of the house in efforts to keep it in that form, at that height, and as much of that viable construction as possible. Hopefully that's will allay at least some of the concerns of the applicant. So I would vote with staff's recommendation and staff's comments. Thanks.
This is Glenn Gardner. Bill, I appreciate your working to try to clarify that. I am aligned with staff, except for the fact that when I reviewed the drawings and when I went by and looked at the house, it appears some roof lines and things are changing, and perhaps this was mentioned or already talked about on site, but that was my biggest concern. Is the drawing that's been submitted an accurate representation of the form of the structure that's there? To my eye, it appeared different. So I guess I may actually pose that more as a question to the applicant, perhaps.
Can I run to that?
Yep, go ahead, Mr. Kime.
So the structure of the house was in fairly bad shape, and we did a pretty close to process of trying to recapture the shape and scope and design of the roof, but it was a little challenging with the measurements. I will say this, the expectation that we have is that you will receive the exact roof line that this house was born with when we finish the construction on the project. So if it doesn't appear that way on the drawings, I can certainly annotate the drawings in such a way to indicate that the actual plan for this is that it ends up as it is. The only modification to this structure that we've really got in mind is just an addition on the rear that's set back in such a way that it wouldn't really be visible and is consistent with the architecture of the existing house.
Thank you. Yeah, to flip back, I'm unfortunately on one screen now because of the feedback I was having. Could we go back to the submitted front elevation of the drawing?
Sure. How's that?
You're muted, Glenn.
Sorry, I'm truly juggling back and forth with one screen. I think A9, detail A and detail D kind of tell the story of what I'm bringing up. The drawings are not accurate. And so I frankly am not able to move forward with any vote with the drawings not accurately representing what the house is. I mean, that whole roof line is shifted over to the left, and like the piazza screen doesn't tie back into the roof appropriately. Those windows are different. They're wider. They're closer together than the actual house is. I think this is a lot more than just annotating drawings. I think we need accurate drawings.
Glenn, I wonder though, I mean, these drawings are sort of predicated on having an approval to demolish the structure, whereas if they don't have that, then the form stays and they have a clear guide as to how to maintain that form because it does not get demolished.
That's true, Julia, and I guess, you know, obviously there is a little bit, I think, of technical verbiage here between a partial demolition and a full demolition, and we are hearing what the applicant is telling us, or at least I am, but then the drawings that they've submitted don't reflect, you know, what I call a partial demolition and salvage. That's an entirely different structure.
I agree. And since our purview is only demolition, you know, their proposed drawings really are not, you know, really that relevant.
Sure.
So I think, you know, it sounds like what they want to do is the right thing. I just don't think they need to ask for a demolition permit to do that. They need to develop a good preservation plan and work with staff and preserve this. And we don't expect for 90% of the fabric to be there when we see it finished, but we expect for there to be a thoughtful process to keep as much as possible and never have an empty lot, you know, ever.
Yeah, Julia, I think you've got the point exactly. The idea is, in denial of demolition, what we're saying is preserve the form as is. So I think you're exactly right.
I think that definitely helped hone in on clarifying that. Yes, and to the applicant, I think we all understand that, you know, there are a lot of boards and a lot of lumber here that has to be replaced, but even if it's new, it should look like what is currently there, not what is submitted on paper.
Yeah, and if you let what's there go away, even for an hour, you won't be able to put it back properly because you don't have perfect documentation of it, and you'll lose the guide that's existing right now.
I guess I would have maybe one question of staff in that. So with, for example, the Jackson Street homes and some other homes that have been successfully brought back to life, basically, I'm sure there were similar preservation plans and things like that. So the applicant, staff, you might be able to share some information with this applicant about the format of that, you know, documentation and how that all worked, and basically have the same type of preservation plan in place for this home. If it's available.
Absolutely.
Great.
So I'll make a motion for denial as submitted with staff comments and final review by staff.
Thank you, Julia. We have a motion on the floor for denial submitted with staff comments and final review by staff. Do I have a second?
Bill, I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. Put it to a vote. Glenn?
Yay in favor?
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Kime.
Can I ask one clarification question just so I can be ready with the next submission?
Yes, Mr. Kime, please do.
Okay, so the front of the house where the CMU block thing has been put up as the parapet, that obviously is not historic. There won't be an opposition to removing that and putting it back to the correct facade, I'm assuming.
State the question again.
If you look at the house, there is a CMU structural that covers the parapet that was obviously built maybe 70s or 80s. It's very inconsistent with the architectural style of the house. It was just something somebody slapped on there. We would like it to go back to the original look. So I will have to request demolition of that.
Right, since that's out of BAR purview, you do not need to request demolition of that. It's part of your scope, yes, but what you put back there is not in BAR jurisdiction.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to put back what was there, but I just need that to go. So I want to make sure that it's okay for the demolition of that non-consistent structure.
Yes.
And then the other question I have is I'm going to have to ask for the demolition of the back of the structure. It doesn't have any direct lines of visibility that I could see. Is
so
there any
you can
reason?
You can include all of that information in your preservation plan, and we can set up a meeting to go over what all needs to be in that plan at another time, but that can be part of the plan.
Okay, and if I wanted to get access to the preservation plan from the adjacent property that we've discussed in this conversation, would I be able to get that, or do I need to like pop a FOIA and request it, or can I maybe get, I'll email somebody from the group here, maybe Kim or someone, and just ask for that information after this. Thank you.
Perfect.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you,
Kime.
Mr. Kime.
Have a nice day.
Okay, next on the agenda is 60 Meeting Street, and Glenn, I believe we could recuse Glenn.
I will remove you.
Remove Glenn.
Glenn. Put on hold. You're on hold. Glenn's on hold.
Okay, so 60 meeting is actually agenda items number 4 and 5. 4 is the request for demolition, and 5 is request for approval for new construction. Purposes of this presentation, Kim, if you'll give your presentation once, and then Mr. Kronk, I'd like to clearly delineate between the application for the demolition versus the new construction, but we'll handle this all together in one agenda item. So Kim, I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you. The request is for final approval for partial demolition of a 3rd floor addition on the Carriage House and Carriage House Chimneys. The building's a Category 2 in the Charlestown neighborhood. It was built in 1771 and is in the Old and Historic District. Here's an aerial right on the corner of Meeting and Trad. Just some site photos. Mr. Kronk has much better photos in his submittal, so I'll let him take that. But these are the Sanborn maps from 1902, which shows the incorrect building. Sorry about that. And Mr. Kronk, if you want to take it from here, you have the floor.
Kim, one quick clarification. So did you have a separate presentation you were going to do for agenda item number 5, the same one?
Well, no, we'll just keep rolling, and I won't go through it again because you're familiar with it now.
All right, thank you. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Kronk.
All right, Madam Chair and members of the board, thank you for the opportunity to present the demolition portion of our proposal. I think this particular package is a little bit less in depth than what we'll see in the proposed, but fundamentally, From a demolition standpoint, the primary objects would be the existing structure that is on the 3rd floor above the 2nd floor. It appears from materiality and just from the research that we've done that might have been anywhere between the 30s and 50s perhaps. It is a simple box with a flat roof. That flat roof extends out beyond the parapet on the west and extends slightly to the north, supported by steel columns. We're proposing to remove that roof, that overhang, the west wall and the north wall. The south wall is actually an adjoining wall to the hyphen, which is the 3-story interstitial building between the 4-story building and the 2-story building. Replace that box, as we're saying, and most importantly, not replace the overhang and the steel columns. Bring it back to a simple mass that we would have seen in the 1890s massing that was on the roof. In that particular case, it was a conservatory with a glass roof, but with no overhang. So what we're proposing is a replacement of the simple box. I think another important element of the demolition package is the egress stair. We think that might have been a 40s, 50s, 60s in an effort to provide egress for multiple apartment buildings. As we had an opportunity to talk this morning, the Sanmore maps and the city directory show that this particular building was shown as an individual dwelling as opposed to a tenement building, which is its sister building next door. We thought that was kind of unusual. So it has started out as a single dwelling for the owner previous to Mr. Ellis, and then was a single dwelling for Mr. Ellis, and ultimately at some point in time became a dwelling unit with multiple units. We are also proposing to restore or bring back the original carriage arch that's in the 2-story building. So that would be a demolition of a window and a door. And we are also looking to remove a single gate that's on the street courtyard and replace it with the original 2 gate. So I think from a demolition standpoint, those are the items. It might be easier to clarify which items are going to be removed in the proposal package. But I think this at least identifies those items.
Okay, do we have any board questions for the demolition portion? All right, well, I'll move on to public comment. Kim, do we have any?
We do. We have Anna Catherine Carroll.
The Preservation Society would like to comment on the second half of this application. Would that be okay, Kim, or would you like me to present that now?
Why don't we just, Lindsay, that's up to you, but.
Yeah, because these need to be decided separately, let's roll through and we'll have that in the second part. So Kim, I just won't have you do your presentation again, and then we'll skip directly on the next agenda item to Mr. Croft's presentation. Any other public comment? Anna Catherine, we'll come back to you on agenda item
5. We have April Wood. I'm not sure if she's speaking on this portion or not.
Okay.
I'm speaking on the second portion.
Okay.
Then we have no further public comment.
Okay, great. City staff comments and recommendations. Yeah.
Only good. BAR staff have no concerns over the demolition proposal, which will provide a significant improvement to insensitive alterations. So we're recommending final approval.
All right. Mr. Cronk, if you had any follow-up with respect to demolition and staff comments, do you have anything else?
No, Madam Chair.
I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
I can just go ahead and make a motion for final approval.
All right. The motion by Julia for final approval. Do I have a second?
This is Bill. I'll second.
Bill, put it to a vote. Julia,
Yay in favor?
Bill,
Yay in favor.
and the chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Now, agenda item number 5, again, 60 Meeting Street. Kim, you've given your presentation, and so Mr. Cronk, I'll turn it back over to you for your presentation of the planned new construction.
Quick, I'll just clarify, for the agenda item number 5, they're requesting conceptual approval for new construction of 3rd floor addition, modifications to the carriage house, including window openings, removal of fire escape, and modifications to the gate and wall. Okay. Turn it over to Mr.
All right, thank you, board. I appreciate that. I also wanted to thank Kim and Ms. Parrish for their diligent assistance in helping us kind of put together a proper message on the proposed components of this project. You know, we fundamentally see it in 5 pieces. These are a little more fun than demolition. But I think that the real focus is on the courtyard, the secondary structure, and the rooftop, and really kind of restoring that original vision from a pedestrian scale, either coming from the north to the south on either side of the street. This is a perspective on the other side of the street. It really kind of shows the delineation of that primary 4-story structure. That is the Second Empire modification from the 1890s. It was originally a 3-story building. The 2-story building was added prior to that 1890s, but it was embellished in that Second Empire language. The hyphen that is that 3-story piece that is kind of that interstitial between our proposed element on the roof, that was there and slightly modified with a banding and that kind of thing. So the 5 elements that we're proposing are the replacement of the west and the north walls on what we're calling that 3rd floor box, reestablishing the original opening to the coursing in the block wall of the courtyard that is a gate to the courtyard and would have been an online entrance into the carriage opening. That is currently a window and a door, and we'd like to bring that back. As you see in the photograph to the left, there's kind of a small arc that is non-coined that goes over the top, a slight, about an inch of a band that occurs. So that's the element that we'd like to bring back. This view is kind of important to, if you can go back, Kim, I think you had it right there. That really gives us an indication of, as you're from a pedestrian level, as you walk through, there's so much going on to take away from the beauty of that house and kind of the difference between the primary structure and the secondary structure. And we felt that a couple of those were clearly the stair. That's pretty straightforward. All of the ironwork that is represented in the handrails that occur on top of the parapet, the columns that support that extended roof. We really wanted to clean that up, as well as some of the downspouts and leader boxes that aren't done correctly, a lot of electrical and conduit. So really bring back that courtyard as kind of a beautiful piece. The light comes in the afternoon and provides a great space. That'll also be a key feature for the new owner. So this view gives you a sense of kind of returning a good bit of that mansard roof from the pedestrian level. As you proceed south, we'll bring back more sky, and instead of seeing that kind of overhanged canopy, it'll go back to sky and ultimately see that community wall, or that common wall that marries the 4-story structure with its sister in the back. So again, with this addition to the set, we're calling these S drawings. These were an attempt to bring a more comparative effort to the drawings than was previously submitted. So we can see, as we scroll down, we can see a couple of added elements that I think are important. One is a section or 2 sections that show you the original box and the new box. There's also comparative elements that show you the original elevation of that west facade with and without that carriage opening. Kim, if you can go down, please. So if we go to, again, one more slide. One more slide. And one more slide. Thank you. This is a comparative plan of the original box, as you can see on the top, and the new box. We've actually shortened it up a bit in the north to south direction. And we've increased the depth of that box about 1.9, I believe it is, in its depth, which allows us to have kind of a counter space in the back and really create more of a gardening kind of shed space. So it'll have a little bit of the feel of the original conservatory, except for the pitched roof. It's now engaged to the hyphen. I guess it's more of an orangery now than a conservatory, but we feel that it still remains or allows that terrace to remain. We're going to be lowering that terrace. That allows us to remove all the iron handrail that surrounds the parapet, get it back to its clean original parapet. We'll still have a 36-inch code requirement at the inside of that parapet by removing that kind of raised roofing section. If we go down another slide. This is kind of a comparative roof. So you can see there's a lot less roof, certainly a lot less roof visible from the street. We're also proposing to remove a furnace stack that is on the very north part of the building. We were not able to find when that was added. We do know that in plan or in the original Sanborn maps, the current four-story building was there. There was a small wooden structure kind of where the hyphen is. And then the great little carriage house, what appears to be a carriage house, was actually a store. It was listed as a store, kind of a community neighborhood store in the city directory in the 1780s, I believe it was. So the space behind that store was actually a little mini kind of courtyard alley that would have been open to the sky and abutted a common wall. So that space, which is now a bathroom, appears to be 1960s concrete block that connects the two. So we don't know when that furnace came in. It certainly seems older than 50s or 60s, but we're proposing to remove that. We're also proposing to remove a chimney that you see on the top of the screen in the center of that roof. That's been significantly modified and sleeved, and there's actually a steel tube that runs through it. And you can see in the elevations further in the deck that show that it has been significantly modified and has ultimately become a source of leaks and structural failure at that area that we saw on the site this morning coming through the roof. So our proposal is to take that out. It's not seen from the street. It's not seen from any public area, and it's certainly not part of the composition of the building. Obviously, our two primary chimneys, we're not considering anything being done there. Those are original. If we go to the next slide, Kim. I'm sure I'm running out. That again, that's the true roof plan. The elevation existing. If we go down one. That is the elevation proposed. We'll have a zoomed in version to see it a little bit more clear. This indicates the arched return without the courtyard wall. Side elevation. Another side elevation here, you can see a comparative effort. So on the left is the existing, on the right is the proposed. Next slide. This shows the back of the existing. Again, the outline of the in the foreground is the sister building. Everything in the background is the project that we're discussing. This is the proposed. Again, a comparative elevation of existing and proposed. One of the things that I think are, if you go back up one, I'm sorry, Kim, is you can see that that fireplace has been modified. It's been sleeved. And it from the Sanborn maps, that fireplace would have had to have been extended whenever this box was added to meet the code of a fireplace going higher than the roof. There has been an additive component to that fireplace. So that would not have been original. That would have been of the time of the box, so to raise it higher than it is. And I think that's probably where a lot of the structural problems and waterproofing occurred. You can see in the proposed lower that we are not trying to align with or engage the existing parapet section. We want it to be clear that this is not of that 1890s transformation, but that it's separate. We've also chosen to kind of have a little bit of a darker tone. We don't know what that paint will be, but a darker tone so that it's clearly not of the stucco language. It's more of a secondary or tertiary element. Next slide, please. North elevation comparative. Next slide.
Mr. Cronk, you've got about a minute left.
Okay, we should wrap it up. These are two sections that I think you asked for. This gives you an indication of how we see that that architecture beyond the parapet wall. The sill height's at 36 inches. We'll have a continuous sill. Those are true French casements. We'll have a stile and rail panel that occurs below. So that's seen from the terrace level, but not the street level. Next slide. Here's a section running east-west from the north that gives you an indication of the door running through the center, and also how that box engages the existing common. That's actually not a common wall, that's the end wall. There's a gap between the addition that is ongoing right now in the next property. Next slide. So from here are just kind of indications of the condition of that box. Everything in the deck below is the original submission, which has all of the color elevations, the color details. And if you really need to drill down on anything at that point, there's a lot more information down there. But I think today we wanted to provide a more easy comparative study of proposed and existing. That wraps up our thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cronk. Do my fellow board members have any questions for Mr. Cronk?
Quickly, the chimney that you're proposing to remove, there are fireplaces below that, but you're removing those as well. Is that the plan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And just the east wall of your rooftop enclosure, I'm not sure you could add any more fenestration at that location. I think it's zero property line. I don't know that it's visible at all. That just struck me. Consider that.
We originally had at the corner, which is the northeast corner, we did have an opening there. That's kind of the open part of that interior space as it transitions out to the terrace. Certainly a valid idea. A lot of it is that we were kind of keeping that east wall because it is engaging the parapet. There's not one in it. We could cut one in it. I think it probably would be a beautiful view. There aren't really any privacy issues at that third floor like we have in the second floor now that addition was added. And I'll certainly present that to the owner and maybe it's a component of our next reviews.
Yeah, no, I agree. It would be nice. I just don't think that code-wise it would be allowed at zero property line.
Okay.
Yeah, and then Julie, I guess to that point too, even the rooftop, and I might be wrong in my interpretation, but isn't it even in the perpendicular plane within 3 feet of that property line? I believe potentially an issue there as well with fenestration. And I did have a question regarding the fenestration of the rooftop. I guess enclosed area. I see the French casements and everything. Can you give us a summary of the materials that you're proposing to use there, or as far as the windows and fenestration and doors, et cetera?
I mean, we'd like to propose a Tischler quality painted product. We'll need to get a true casement that can meet the DP pressures without the center bar. So we haven't necessarily picked, but it would be a painted wood would be the preference.
Okay.
I mean, I think it needs to stand as a piece of furniture, you know, almost in a sense. So I think its quality would be something that we'd really try to elevate.
Thank you.
Do we have any other board questions at this time? All right, now let's move on to public comment. Kim? Kim, you're on mute.
We have April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has met with the applicant on site and has reviewed the request for conceptual approval for new construction of a third floor addition, modifications to the carriage house, including window openings, removal of fire escape, and modifications to the gate and wall. We've been impressed by the applicant's level of analysis and consideration of the historic materials of this building, and we have no objections to the requests. We respectfully recommend approval of this request and look forward to seeing the rehabilitation of this exceptional structure. Thank you.
And we also have Anna Catherine Carroll.
Thank you, Kim. Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. The Preservation Society appreciates the opportunity to visit and tour the site today to more closely inspect the building and existing addition. We are supportive of the proposed approach to restore the front facade of this carriage house based on photographic evidence, and we believe it is especially positive to remove the metal stair that is currently obscuring this portion of the building. We also feel the proposed addition at the third floor is well designed and detailed and presents a significant improvement to the existing configuration, and we would ask that the board approve this application. Thank you.
Kim, I think that's it for public comment on this, correct?
Yes, it is.
All right, I'll turn it over to you for city staff comments and recommendations.
Thank you. Alterations to the carriage house to return the building to original form are appropriate and positive. The refined details and appropriate proportions on the proposed volume of the third floor are met with great reception from the BAR staff. Staff's recommending conceptual approval with final review by staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Cronk, did you have any response to the public comment or any staff recommendation or comment?
No, ma'am. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
If you don't mind, can I ask the applicant one more quick question about the return of the balcony on kind of the northwest corner of the main house? Can you just kind of talk through what you were thinking there?
It appears that our understanding is that in the 1890s.
June 7th, I'll see you. All week.
Excuse me, it appears that the 1890 transformation included a box that is below the balcony, kind of at the crotch of the 4-story and the 2-story. From everything we can see, that appeared to have occurred at that period. And as we remove the fire stair, that fire stair used the balcony as a landing point and a transition between floors. And the balcony is not structurally supported by that box underneath because it has its own waterproofing on the top. So our understanding is that is something that needs to remain. And when we take the stair down, we're going to fabricate a replacement rail that continues as it once did into the west wall of the second floor. There's actually some pieces and parts down below. So we propose to leave that box because it was probably there, and replace the rail as it continues into the building. In addition to the floor, the decking, and all of those, iron brackets.
Thanks. Yeah, I concur with all the comments that have been made. I think this is a thoughtful proposal, and I appreciate all the consideration that's gone into it. No objection to anything I see.
I agree with Julia. I think this is especially the removal of that, the fire escape and the, modifications to this carriage house that used to be a store. I think it's a great improvement on this west elevation. It'll be really nice. So.
Yeah, this is Bill. I have nothing to add. Thanks.
I will make a motion for conceptual approval with final review by staff.
Thank you, Julia. We have a motion on the floor with conceptual approval with final review by staff. Do I have a second?
This is Bill. I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. Let's do a vote. Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Cronk.
Thank you. Thank you all.
And can we bring Glenn back in?
Yes, ma'am.
So agenda item number 6, 1 Percy Street has been deferred by staff. So I see Glenn is back. We are on agenda item number 7, 23 Reed Street. So Kim, whenever you're ready, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Lindsay. 23 Reed Street is requesting conceptual approval for new construction of a single-family residence. It's in the east side in the Old City District. I did have some contextual slides somewhere. Let me see if I can pull those up real quick. Here we go. It's in the east side neighborhood. And it's on this vacant lot here right next to one new construction and one more modern building. This is looking west on Reed and east. And here's the 1944 Sanborn map. And the previous motion on February 25th was deferral for architectural detailing with board comments to eliminate ground level points, address lower east wall of the rear portion of the building, restudy impact of rear addition at the edge of the house and rear porch, restudy return of coins of the piazza screen wall, and staff comments 2, 3, 7, and 8. And Mr. Shackelford, you have the floor whenever you're ready to speak.
Okay, can you advance to the next slide?
Okay.
And to the next. So to address each of the points in the motion, it'll be more evident in the elevations, but this begins to show the changes that we did make. We did equalize the piazza wall to be the same dimension as the face of the coin on the front elevation. We also centered all of the openings on the porch to work with the center lines of the column base. And then you'll see it in plan, the change we made to the floor plan to kind of offset the rear portion of the mass. So if you go to the next slide. This shows some of the materials that we're proposing to use, which will be brick at the base, cementitious stucco over a concrete block for the rest of the house, metal roof, as well as architecturally correct porch columns. If you could go to the next slide. So here, one of the columns was one of the comments was to look at the overall height. So we did take a foot out of the house, 6 inches on each floor. So you can see that in the section. On the front elevation, we did reduce the size of the windows, as well as we put them in line with the heads of the door. And that's one comment that, I'm fine to make that change, but it would be nice if we could divorce those two, if that's possible, because I often don't put when the windows are of a certain proportion, don't put them at the heads of the door. They're often taller, which would get the window a little better in the wall between floor and ceiling. The other change we made is we did bring the brick all the way around the building. We removed the arched opening on the front at the ground level and turned that into 2 fixed shuttered openings. And if you could go to the next slide. So for the left elevation, we added 2 fixed shuttered openings there at the ground level to help with the comments about the wall being a little too sparse. I think with the brick and the openings, this seemed to bring some balance, because we would like not to have, that's our kitchen appliance wall, so it'd be nice not to have windows at the first living level. As you can see, we also brought the coins size around. You can see that here in the size of the piazza screen. I did calculate, and I didn't realize that we exceeded the 30%, so we did reduce the number of dormers. So we're right at the 30%. And the other thing we did, after centering all of the fenestration openings on the column bays, so we've set the front of the house kind of as a piece, and then the rear part is still an extension of the language of the house. And I know it's been talked about it reading as an addition, but it's really meant to be the same language. It's not attempting to be an addition. It's just the program requirement to have it be a roof deck is the reason that I think it looks like an addition. But again, we have brought that away from kind of the pitched roof portion with a recess, and you can see that in the plan as well as here, where there is kind of a separation, a shadow separation. So do you go to the next slide? And then here, this just shows the continuation of the brick around the entire base of the structure. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shackelford. Do we have any board questions for Mr. Shackelford? All right, hearing none.
I've got a quick one.
Oh, okay.
Since you've clearly given a lot of thought to all of this, have you considered how you will handle flood vents? I know it's conceptual, but I was just wondering, considered that?
Well, I believe the majority of the flood vents we can probably get along the 2 long sides of the house, and one on the driveway side would be kind of in the wall that is not the arched wall. So but they are just going to be exposed flood vents. Yes, I wouldn't want to draw any more attention to them than we have to. But we would use like a smart or a flood flap type of vents.
Mm-hmm. All right, and then while I've got you, are you thinking that the full brick veneer also on CMU? Would it be stepped out from the stucco above, or would you somehow cantilever something to have them be flush?
Right, the intent is for it to be flush. It's a little tricky structurally, and that'll be the next step. We'll develop those details if we're able to move forward with this.
Thank you.
The intention is that it's flush.
Thanks.
All right, we'll move on to public comment. Kim, do we have anyone?
Yeah, Mr. Shackelford, I have Dawn Lindbergh signed up to speak. I don't know if she was just, if she'd like to make some comments.
Yeah, she did tell me she was on, and she had joined the presentation early. I don't know if she had to leave for any reason.
Oh, here she is.
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of wanted to reiterate, because it's been, a while, I think, since we presented. But I just wanted to, there were a lot of comments about the high style of the house. And, I'm just reiterating that I am copying, for the most part, the architectural details of historic homes, in the neighborhood, and, neighborhoods right next door, Ragsboro, East Side. You're talking 14 Elizabeth Street, 53 Elizabeth Street, 166 Wentworth Street, 53 Hassel Street, the Aiken Rent House, which is pretty much on the east side itself. It's 2 blocks from this neighborhood, from this lot. 14 Judith Street. So, we're just, we're really trying to do everything to make this beautiful architectural, even though, it's on the east side. There's still a lot of homes really close to that have, other same high style that are inspired, that this is inspired by. Along with my house on Elizabeth Street, on 13 Elizabeth Street, which is built in 1835.
Right, and if I could add to that, I did put a kind of a collage of photos of homes in the neighborhood at the end of the presentation. Not that we are using any of those as direct details, but it does show there's a huge range of architectural styles, level of detail, turn balusters, side lights on piazzas. So it is a very rich neighborhood, and I do think we're just continuing this because we're a new build. It probably just seems like it's so.
Thank you. We'll move on to public comment.
We have no more comments.
Okay. I'll let you present city staff comments and recommendations.
Thank you, Lindsay. The applicant has followed the directives laid forth by the board during the February 25th meeting, and the drawings are much improved. Introducing the false fixed shutter detail, though, at the ground floor presents an inconsistency, and there are no other shutters in the proposal. Replace the brick niche, as this would be more appropriate. In keeping with general precedent, we recommend a reduced floor-to-floor height and encourage further reduction of 12 inches between the first and second living space. The location of floors and context of adjacent neighbors would bring harmony and cohesion between the proposal and the street context. Include a detail of the intersection of the brick and stucco in the next submittal. There have been improvements made to where the piazza meets the rear portion, but still problematic and warrants continued discussion. The front stoop seems unusual in size, decrease its depth. Staff continue to have concern with the formal styling of the proposal, but the board has accepted the refined detailing and general architectural direction. So the staff's recommending conceptual approval with staff comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. Lindberg or Mr. Shackelford, did you have any, did you want any clarification on staff comments?
Time.
I do would like some board discussion just on the request to get another 12 inches out of the house and the ceiling height and the implication to the ceiling heights.
Noted. If nothing further, I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
Real quick, Kim, can you point out that area where your comment mentioned reduction of ceiling height? Can you?
First and second floors.
In terms of street context, or?
Yes, you're talking about, the first and second living levels, or are you talking about the?
Yes,
okay,
so there's
sure.
over 10 and then over 9, and we think probably bringing it down to 10 and 9 is more in keeping with what we generally recommend and what you guys generally approve.
I see. Okay, I guess I'll just keep going. I think it has come a long way, and especially when you saw the comparative elevations, you can really see just visually, just sitting back and looking, it has changed quite a bit. Visual proportions, even though the house is relatively as wide as it was, and there has been a height reduction of a foot proposed here. Even another foot might even make it more dramatic. It's come a long way, and I think to the point now where I am in agreement with staff's comments and recommendations. Kim, is that your background?
Is there a guy there talking a lot?
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just your green box lights up when that noise happens, so I assume that's somebody next to your desk.
My coworkers need to go home.
Tell them we're in a meeting. But yeah, I think it has come a long way, and I do agree. We're very close there. You know, I think another foot might even enhance that even further. So I do see your point, or even maybe a compromise somewhere in between. But visually, it's really come a long way, and so I would be in support of staff's comments and recommendations, with maybe that third point, or I believe it was comment 3 about the height floor, the 12-inch reduction, maybe a negotiable point somewhere in between. But yeah, it's come a long way. That's all I have. Thank you.
I'll weigh in and add to that. I do appreciate how you relocated the garage access to the rear. It's helpful. I still don't really think this style is relating to its context at all, but I appreciate that you want to use really high quality materials. And even though it's not exactly typical of the neighborhood, I'm fine with the masonry. I'd still just like to see it simplified. You know, the coins and the keystones are really foreign to this particular piece of downtown, but if the others are fine with that, so be it. There are also a few proportional things that could still be refined a little bit, like that window in the gable seems quite undersized. And, you know, hopefully the west elevation fenestration could be cleaned up a little bit more. And at your rear elevation, there seems to be some kind of structural magic going on at that landing that doesn't have a post under it. It's hard to see in elevation, but I just wanted to suggest that you maybe consider putting the HVAC up on the roof, and then you wouldn't have to step out of the porch and then turn right to get down the stairs. That's really all I've got. I appreciate that you want to build a really nice house.
Glenn Gardner, I'll keep it very simple, and that I echo a lot of what's already been said. I think there are a couple tweaks that could still be made, but I think a lot of what has been requested and talked about has been done and has been addressed, and I don't like to ask somebody to dumb something down, or not dumb it down, to overly simplify, or especially reduce the quality of materials, which I certainly appreciate that desire here. And so with regard to the level of approval that's being requested, I am comfortable with this project moving forward at this point, with you know, with a few little notes like staff has commented on, but I think they've worked very hard at getting where they've come, and I think they should at this point start to proceed onward.
I'd be willing to go ahead and make a motion if that's okay. And I will make a motion for conceptual approval with staff comments. The only maybe minor modification would be comment number 3. I would say a further reduction of, I would just say a further reduction and to some visually significant amount. It could be 6 to 12 inches, maybe something like that. I might say that. So yeah, this is just conceptual approval with staff comments with that one potential revision to comment number 3.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comments and a modification to staff comment number 3, which is a further reduction of between 6 inches and 12 inches between both the first and second floor living space. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Glenn.
Glenn.
Put it to a vote. Julia?
Yay.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Glenn?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Lindberg and Mr. Shackelford. Moving on to agenda item number 8, 80 Alexander Street. I believe, Glenn, are you presenting?
I'm not, no, so you can pause me, and Tori is on our office account, I believe, hopefully.
Got it. Kim, if you'll remove Glenn from the meeting.
Thank you.
Oh, Kim, you're on mute.
Goodness. Thank you. 80 Alexander Street is requesting final approval for the continuation of a 9-foot 6-inch brick and stucco wall to replace a 12-foot chain link fence. The building's a category 2 in the Mazik Ragboro neighborhood, circa 1800 and in the old and historic district. Just for a little bit of context, here's an aerial with the property just north of Calhoun and to the west of East Bay. There's another aerial image from above and an image of the existing site during the construction of the hotel. Here's the building itself, and you can see the wall just off to the left. Some Sanborn maps from 1902 and 1944. An old photo from Historic Charleston Foundation. And if Tori would like to take it from here, you have the floor whenever you're ready.
If you could go down 1 or 2 slides. Yeah, thank you. Hi, I'm Tori James with Glenn Gardner Landscape Architect. We are requesting to replace the existing 12-foot chain link fence with a new 9.5-foot stucco and brick garden wall. The proposed wall will match the existing masonry wall along the sidewalk and tie into the existing brick column at the property corner. The chain link fence we are asking to replace is approximately 30 years old and is covered with vines. We did submit and receive approval from zoning for the wall height, and as mentioned, it is matching the height of the existing front garden wall. The adjacent property at 84 Alexander Street is currently for sale. We reached out to the realtor who did not anticipate any concerns, and we have also emailed the neighborhood association. That's it.
Thank you, Ms. James. Are there any questions from board members? All right, let's move on.
Oh, real quick, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Lindsay, I had to get it off of mute here. Does this wall basically ride along the property line?
Yeah, but it's completely on the client's property.
Including the footing?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All right, we'll move on to public comment. Kim, do we have anyone from the public?
No, we don't.
All right, then I'll turn it over to you for city staff comments and recommendations.
The proposal is appropriate and the staff have no concerns. We would suggest introducing a rhythm and interest by breaking the wall at regular intervals with the construction of piers. We are recommending final approval.
Thank you, Kim. Ms. James, did you want any clarification on staff comments?
No, we're happy to introduce the rhythm and interest with the construction of piers.
Thank you, Ms. James. I'll open it up for board discussion and a vote.
This is Bill. I guess I would say I agree with staff's comment and recommendation. I guess the question would be introducing piers may potentially either involve slight shifting of the wall position centered in the piers, but that's hopefully going to be okay. And gosh, I hate the thought of 50-year-old chain link fence being historic. So I'm glad to see this thing going away. So yeah, I'm agreeing with staff's comments and support the recommendation.
I wish you here. Just make a motion for final approval.
Thank you, Julia. We have a motion on the floor for final approval. Do I have a second?
Bill, I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. I'll put it to a vote. Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
I'm sorry, Madam Chairman. Was that final approval with staff's comments? I'm sorry.
That is not the motion that you made.
Oh, that's fine. We can add that. Sorry, Bill.
So, Bill, you have a motion for final approval with staff comments.
I will second that motion.
Okay.
Is it procedurally, have we done the right thing, Lindsay?
Yes, I apologize. Julia made the motion. We amended it. Bill, you a second. Julia?
Yes.
I'm putting it to a vote now, a revote. Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yay in favor.
Chair votes with the majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. James.
Yep.
Kim, if we can bring Glenn back into the meeting, please. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 9, 172 Tradd Street. Kim, if you give us an introduction.
I will, thank you. Okay, 172 Tradd Street's requesting final approval for a copper awning. The building's a category 1 in the Charlestown neighborhood, circa 1834, and in the old and historic district. Here's an aerial image to familiarize yourself with the property. Corner of Tradd and Rutledge. Here's a little close-up. And the front of the house on Tradd. And peeking down the side, some sandboard maps from 1902 and revised in 44. And if Mr. Hildebrand wants to take it from here, you have the floor.
Mr. Hildebrand, you're on mute.
We appreciate y'all's time on this. I wasn't going to speak, but we will take any comments that y'all have back to ownership and the architecture and make recommendations or changes to the plans as y'all advise.
Thank you, Mr. Hildebrand. Do we have any questions from board members for Mr. Hildebrand?
Can you explain what is that? Is the bracket that's currently just hanging over the door, is that indicative of the height and location of what's proposed, or is that just?
Yes, it will be about halfway up of that, the bottom of it. And that old bracket used to hold a very large light fixture that hang out there that the chain finally rusted through the years. It fell to the ground.
And then I was wondering if you could just maybe explain, Kim, is that you again? Somebody's talking. Sorry. Can you explain the like evolution of this facade, and the porch is not original, the door is not original, is that correct?
That is correct.
Thanks.
Do we have any other board questions?
Yes, this is Bill. I'm sorry. Slow on the unmute here. So this is a purely a cantilevered construction. Is that what we're talking about here?
Yes, it will be.
So it will be engaging. Oh, I see. Okay. There's minimal engagement to the floor system. I do see that now.
Out of the house.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thank you.
No other board questions at this time?
Oh, sorry, one more. That section there says something about recessed cans at 36 inches on center. Wouldn't that be like, you thinking like 4 of those on this thing?
Yeah, I would probably say about 4 if they're going 4 inches. 3 to 4.
Julia, do you have anything else? Okay.
Thanks.
Moving on to public comment. Kim, I don't see any letters.
We just have April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for final approval for a copper awning at 172 Trav Street. Conceptually, we do not object to an awning in this location. However, we believe that the proposed awning is too large and should be reduced in width to cover the door only. Thank you.
Thank you, April. Kim, if that's all, I'll turn it over to you for staff comments and recommendations.
Thank you, Lindsay. Well, this is a category 1 building, which needs more scrutiny with review. We realize the concern for weatherization. But we just have a couple comments. Shrink the awning to cover only the door or extend it fully to cover the adjacent windows and shutters, which would provide brackets for visual support. The height is rather atypical for an awning or projections, lowered a few inches more to more closely relate to the openings. So the staff's recommending conceptual approval with staff comments.
Thank you, Kim. Mr. Hillebrand, did you want to respond to any of the public comments or staff comments or seek some clarification?
I think to achieve their goal of just some weather protection while they're going in and out of this is their main door they use for access. And I don't know if just going over the door is going to be wide enough for a wind blown rain. So I would think if we could go as wide as we can with y'all's approval, that would be great. Just to give them a little bit more protection.
Thank you, Mr. Hillebrand. I'll open it up now for board discussion and a vote.
Real quick, while we're, I'm not really ready to comment. I just wondered, Kim, could you jump back to that elevation to look at that? Just, okay, thanks. I'm not ready to comment yet. Go ahead, Julia, sorry.
All right, I am ready. And I will say that just I'd request of the applicant in general that for the purposes of reviewing this, it would really be helpful to get all the submittal requirements, the site plan, existing elevation, stuff like that, just to make it clear for us who are not so intimately familiar with this property. You know, in my estimation, I think the awning design is pretty good. I think I'm okay with it, even at the width they're proposing. I don't think there should be that many lights in it. I think maybe it should be pulled down slightly seems to be floating a little bit, especially without support brackets. But those are really my only thoughts about it.
Yeah, this is Bill. I guess I would say my dilemma is kind of similar to what staff's comment was. Well, is it's either over the door or it's widened to cover the shutters flanking. And I guess my concern would be if it's over the door only, the size of it might appear bulky for just that width, and then it would need to be reduced. If it's wider, obviously it could. I think the size is appropriate. So it's kind of down to the point of should it be over the door only, or is it okay? And I think Julia, what you were saying, you're okay with the general width of it as is. I'm okay with it. I do agree with staff's comment though, that it should be. I believe you might staff would want to clarify that because there was a reference to a bracket as well. Was the comment relating to it should be widened to cover the shutters of the windows flanking the doorway, and then the insertion of brackets into these spaces between the shutters of even the more outboard windows? Is that why the extra width?
Yes, staff really would like to see brackets. So that was why we were suggesting either the door or all, including the windows. We think that it is kind of floating out there, but maybe there'd be other ways to mitigate that floating aspect.
Well, I can kind of see that point, but I guess the one thing I'd be a little concerned in that is that maybe two brackets would appear so far apart, it might even appear odd. This is sort of a, I don't know the proper term. We used to call these a run, these little roofs. They're sort of cantilever roofs. And you do see them downtown. I've seen them quite a number of places. So I guess my only sort of thought to it would be is that if it's wider, I think the size and depth of the structure is appropriate. If it's narrower, I think it should be a lot less bulky. So, but I wasn't necessarily seeing the brackets. So I guess what I'm asking is your comment relating to widening in conjunction with installation of brackets? And is that the reason for your potential acceptance of widening?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Not widening without brackets.
Correct.
Okay. Great.
If it's any wider without brackets.
Okay.
No go.
Okay. Thanks for clarifying that. Okay. All right. I guess in that instance, I'd be more inclined to support maybe narrowing it for that reason. I don't even know with brackets if it would necessarily be aesthetically correct. So anyway, that's my opinion. In staff's comments, I would defer more to the narrowing scenario.
Glenn, I'll admit that I'm struggling with the widen versus narrow, because my first inclination is to make it narrow, but then I'm afraid you don't achieve the reason to do this. And if they're not keeping rain off the door or keeping rain off themselves coming and going, it sort of defeats the whole purpose. So I think I'm struggling with that, frankly, with regard to the appropriate width.
Yeah, and I'm speculating about the brackets, whether they would look right or not. I mean, if the applicant really wants to have it widened for the weather protection and everything, I can understand that point. But I in that instance, if it were wider, I would think that staff's comments of brackets could and probably would be applicable. I'd just like to see maybe what it looked like with that. So I would, if the applicant's desire is to make it as wide as possible and adherence to staff's comments about installing brackets, which I think is viable to investigate, I would rather maybe defer it for that reason. Because I'm not adverse to entertain the idea of widening it. I just would like to see kind of what it looks like with the brackets. I mean, I'm sure staff could make this determination as well, but I just think probably in any kind of motion, we just need to be clear if it's wider or narrower. And
I still think it's fine.
yeah, you find where it is.
I do. I think it's a nice compromise. It's not a historic element, and it's not a historic door, so it's like a festival of compromise. And I think the width of it fills that space pretty relatively gracefully. And I see what you're saying about brackets between shutters would be so far apart that it would be uncomfortable, and yet a tiny little awning over just the door is kind of sad and pointless too. So.
Okay.
I'm fine with what they've got.
Yeah, no, I think that might be making the point. That's just compromise of everything right there, and it's maybe probably why they put it where it is. So yeah, I mean, I think that's a valid point.
And I'll sort of add to the bracket comment about I do feel the visual need for brackets if it were wider than currently proposed, but then, I mean, granted, it's not up to us to propose what the brackets would look like, but I then do struggle on this particular home, with what those brackets really should look like, because this is a modern, it is a modern canopy, and I don't know, for whatever reason, when I'm thinking bracket, I have this Victorian bracket in mind, which isn't what should be here, and so. Perhaps my head is just going in the wrong direction on that, but I don't know that I want it to be larger than it currently is. I mean, it is a new, it is a new addition to a historic house. And so I don't know that we should go overkill and give a false appearance of there having been a porch roof back there or something.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to throw this out there and see if it'll fly. Motion for conceptual approval with staff comment number 2 to lower it slightly, so it seems more connected to the fenestration and trim.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor for conceptual approval with staff comment number 2 to lower it to connect it to the fenestration. Do I have that right?
Yeah, and can I add one more board thing? A board comment to consider a hip roof, because just that end elevation is not very elegant. Sorry, that just came out of nowhere.
Okay, so and to add to that motion, a board comment to consider a hipped roof.
And Madam Chairman, real quick, I wanted to ask Julia, also, would you consider maybe less lighting?
Oh, yes, please. Yes, please, less lighting.
Okay.
Julia, would you like to amend your motion for a second?
Yes, I would.
Board comment for,
Right.
do we want to, for just less lighting in general?
Yes.
Okay.
I think 1 would be fine.
All right, I do have a second for Julia's motion.
This is Bill, I'll second.
Thank you, Bill. I'll put it to a vote. Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
Bill?
Yeah, in favor.
Chair votes with a majority and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Mr. Hildebrand.
Thank you.
Now, agenda item number 10, 9 South Tracy Street. Kim?
Thank you. Okay. 9 South Tracy Street is requesting preliminary approval for the removal of character-defining features, including windows, doors, trim, column, and balustrade. It's a category 4 in the West Side neighborhood, was constructed in 1930 and in the historic materials demolition purview. Here's an aerial image just to give you some context. And some site photos. This is looking northwest. And this is the front. And looking southwest. This is a Sanborn map from 1902 and revised in, might be 1944 and revised in 51. And let's see. We have Stephanie, if you want to take it from here.
Hi, good evening. My name is Stephanie Janakopoulos. My husband and I both live in the west side at 9 South Tracy Street. We're Charleston County school teachers and live there with our baby. We are proposing to, could you go on to the next slide? Thank you. We're proposing to first go over the current asbestos siding with cedar, as well as replace the porches with new boards that are rotted, and as well as the upstairs porch, the side porch. If you wouldn't mind going to the next slide. We would like to fill in that side and part of the front to extend our house for livability, to add a bathroom. Currently, there's a small 5x5 bathroom upstairs. So we're proposing to close that part of that in, to then create a small porch and replace the current aluminum door that there is with some of the charming French wood doors that are around the neighborhood. I've had an opportunity to talk to many Westside members to get some recommendations of craftsmen to do those doors. The current windows and doors are aluminum, so they're not new. Some of those banisters as well are patched with like quarter round and things like that. I think patched in the 70s. Speaking with my next door neighbors, I have one next door neighbor, and a neighbor across the street as well. And at some point, my next door neighbor, he said he's a little bit unsure of how to submit his comments, but he wrote me a letter that I also added to my folder. If I could read that in his presence, he said he would like for me to do that, if that would be okay.
I'll let you read it now during your presentation.
Okay, great. Thank you. To the Westside neighborhood and Board of Review. My family has lived in the Westside neighborhood for 50 years. My family bought 7 South Tracy Street many years ago and lived next door to 9 South Tracy Street, where Stephanie Janakopoulos and her husband and baby live. They are respectful, kind, and generous neighbors. Stephanie worked by herself to get an illegally planted tree by a previous owner taken out. The tree was clogging our drain and was very weak, about to fall over and hit our cars. They bought the house a couple years ago and started to work on it. The previous owners over the years have not fixed up the house to keep it strong for years to come. Stephanie and her husband always talk with me about the neighborhood and get my opinion on the house and speak with me about the history of the house. They showed me what their plan is, and I wholly approve of their plan. They want to fix the house to last and add on to the house to grow into the home to stay. My mother was a Charleston County police officer, and my daughter works for CARTA. Stephanie and her husband serve the community. They are public school teachers. I want to see more people of service and working class that help our community stay and live in our community. I always say that my mom would have loved Stephanie and Mark and their baby because they are down to earth and are committed to serving the community. They are also members of the Greek church on the west side. I am their only next door neighbor and original member of the west side. I approve of their plan and ask you to approve of their plans. Addition, residing, and replacing of what is called historic material with new and lasting materials. The new drawings make the house look clean and acceptable for the neighborhood. Please call me with any information. Rodney Goodwin, retired firefighter. And then he gives his phone numbers. That is from 7 South Tracy Street, which is our next door neighbor. And then we have a neighbor across the street as well. Mr. Rodney Goodwin's house next door has some different materials, a brick facade and a laminate siding as well. So we are proposing to do some additions here, as you can see, but none of the materials that we see, the doors, the windows, are original. Some of the banisters we have in question whether they're original or from the 70s. If you could go to the next slides, taking a couple pictures. My sister came to visit, who has multiple disabilities. She put her hand on the railing and it collapsed. So we are able, if you could go into the next pictures, I believe. As you can see, here are some pictures of the neighborhood with many different, there's some very different styles. But if you go on, I'm not sure if they made or not. We took pictures of the existing railing of the banisters, and they're rotted inside, unfortunately. Again, I'm not sure of their historic merit or not. So that is, and that's what I have for you right now.
Thank you, Ms. Janakopoulos. And did I say your last name correctly?
Perfectly, thank you.
Do we have any questions from board members for Ms. Janakopoulos?
I'm curious, we don't have a site plan, do we?
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah, exactly.
No, we don't.
Could you, I'm sorry, a site plan?
Site plan or survey?
I have the just the draftsman's drawings. So here's the original.
Do you have a backyard or area behind the house? Just curious.
A little bit. It's a small, and it's a small area in the back. It's like a patio. It's like a flat. It's a patio on the floor, on the ground, with one palm tree. I think it was more of a driveway, but it's at this point a little bit small for our car.
Thank you.
Do we have any other board questions at this time? All right. We'll move on to public comment.
You have April Wood.
April Wood, Historic Charleston Foundation. HCF has reviewed the application for the removal of character defining features, including windows, doors, trim, columns, and balustrade. We are opposed to this application. The Secretary, the Interior Standards state the following: the historic character of a property shall be retained and preserved. The removal of historic materials or alteration of features in spaces that characterize a property shall be avoided. Furthermore, the BAR has a policy statement against piazza enclosures. The proposed alterations are too heavy-handed and will make the historic building almost unrecognizable as a historic building. If additional space is needed, we suggest that the applicant explore a rear addition to capture that space. We respectfully recommend denial of this application. Thank you.
And we also have Anna Catherine Kale.
Anna Catherine Carroll with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We really appreciate the applicant's presentation and are encouraged by their obviously positive impact on the neighborhood. However, the Preservation Society is, to echo Historic Charleston Foundation, also opposed to this request for demolition of character defining features, in particular, the alterations to the existing porch. As April mentioned, open porches are a unique building feature integral to the architectural history and character of Charleston and are therefore important to preserve. And while there may be a question about the age of some of the porch elements, its overall form is intact and should be preserved. So we would also respectfully ask that the board deny this request. Thank you.
Thank you, Anna Catherine. Kim, I believe that's it for public comment. So I'll turn it over to you for city comments and recommendations.
Thank you. We just have a couple comments. The modifications requested contradict the guidance of the Secretary of the Interior Standards for Rehabilitation. And so the features of the house that are historic should be preserved rather than altered. While we are empathetic with the homeowner's needs, we also need to uphold the standards, but we feel that an alternative solution could be found with the removal of without the removal of so much historic and character defining features. The proposal does not meet the criteria for approval set forth by the BAR policy statement on piazza enclosures. So staff is recommending denial as submitted with staff comments. Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Ms. Janakopoulos, did you want to respond to any comments from the public or the staff or get any clarification on this?
Thank you. Yes. So in terms of the historical elements, so the door is not historical, being aluminum. The windows are not historical, being aluminum. So I guess that is meaning the balusters is what is in discussion about. In terms of rotted wood, how would I go about repairing rotted banisters to then be historic? And I'm asking that very sincerely, since I don't know if anyone could give me that answer.
Kim, is that something that you can respond to, or?
Yeah, you certainly can repair. So while we wouldn't want you to remove any of the historic features, if you need to repair them, that's certainly possible, and you just need a permit to do repairs.
Okay, so if in the
all right, thank you.
Okay, that makes sense. If and I understand like the boards that are completely, on the porch, in terms of repairing the wood inside of the columns, I don't know how to do that. Are you all suggesting that I find someone to recraft the columns into being historic?
This is kind of the question of the board, so I would feel better if the board answered this.
Lindsay, I forget where we are procedurally.
We're actually in, this is probably better if we move on now to board discussion and a vote. And then if you all have any specific questions with Ms. Janakopoulos, then you all can ask her and then she can speak. But so I'll close the applicant response period. Now we'll move into board discussion, which now I think it's appropriate to respond. And
All right, so it's board comment now, board discussion now.
Yeah.
I feel for the applicant, and I really appreciate that you live in this neighborhood, and I love hearing about peaceful neighbor relations. We don't hear enough of that. So that's really cool, and I totally appreciate the sentiments of your neighbor. I get that you want another bathroom, and I am certain there's a way to achieve that. But it's just completely out of character for us to allow for you to remove, the essence of that porch, the openness and the columns and the balusters, because that would not be preservation, and that's what we do. But I'm confident there's a way to achieve what you want to achieve. It's just got to be a little different approach, in my opinion. And it's a really cute house, and I love those porches.
And Glenn Gardner, I'll follow up and kind of echo what Julia has said and elaborate perhaps a little bit more for the applicant on sort of the historic material aspect. I've kind of tried to look fairly closely at the materials, and I mean, you clearly have a lot of materials that are aging, weathering, and are, in some ways failing and need to either be repaired or replaced. And so, Kim and our staff at the city can definitely help you a lot in determining how to replace things and what to replace and what's required. But I would say that our ordinance with regard to piazza enclosure doesn't always rule on the age of the actual materials. A lot of that comes down to the style and the form of the architecture itself. So clearly the entire bottom rail system, to my eye, looks to not be historic. I think that's all been replaced in a much more modern state. And there are a lot of times in working on these houses where you do have to replicate a new version of something that just can't be repaired any longer. The balusters on the second floor piazza appear to be older, and I haven't touched them myself, but they look old in style. And there are times when you have to have a few new ones made, and there are some companies locally who can do that. But I think what for the application today in front of us, to me, what it boils down to is preserving the form and the style of the house, which lends me to not support enclosing the volume of the piazza that's been requested. But as Julia said, I think that there may be, and I hope there would be, another solution that could be a little less intrusive, but would still hopefully meet your family's needs. Because I feel for people who live in old houses and try their best to make them work to live, in modern day with a family. And so I would encourage you to continue to explore this and hopefully find a solution to make the house work for you.
Yeah, this is Bill. I don't really have anything to add to that. I think it was a very good summary, Glenn. I do hope that you do have a way forward. And one of the key terms that was put out was character defining. And the porches are definitely one of the, if not the major character defining part of your home. I'm hoping maybe if you have enough area in the back of the home, there may be some relief for you back there, potentially an addition that might help satisfy your program. But again, I'm in agreement with staff's comments and recommendation.
And this is Lindsay. I don't have too much to add, but I do live around the corner from this house on Fishburne, and I drive by this house every morning. And these porches really are character defining features, and are, you have a great house here. And I do understand the struggle of rotting wood. I'm dealing with it on some of our porches now and determining how to replace, pieces here and there. And I hope, I trust the architects and the professionals on this board that there must be a way to accomplish what you want without removing just the features that you have on this house and this porch.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just say again, because it's almost more difficult when applicants are the homeowners and seem to be very nice people. But I would encourage you really to continue to explore this. I think you can find a solution. I really do.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we do. We want to stay. We believe in living and working in our community. So we do. Too. Thank you.
So I'll make the difficult motion for denial as submitted, with encouragement to explore other avenues and to meet with city staff if need be to discuss historic materials.
All right, we have a motion on the floor by Glenn for denial as submitted. With Glenn, did you want staff comments noted?
I don't know that they're fully applicable. I'm okay with what I've said.
I'll second that.
All right. Kim, did you get that motion?
I did.
Okay. Motion by Glenn. We have a second by Julia, and I'll put it to a vote. Bill?
Yay in favor.
Glenn?
Yay in favor.
Julia?
Yay in favor.
The chair votes with the majority, and the motion passes unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Janakopoulos.
Don't give up and don't move.
All right. That marks the end of our agenda items. Do I have a adjourn the meeting?